Hello, it's a lovely sunny day here in Alstonfield, and today we're going to work the centipede using the laced blanket stitch. I have to own up and say that when I originally made this video I just showed you on the hexagon, but there's a little bit of the hexagon video that I wasn't happy with, and so I'm recording this later and I'm going to show you the whole thing on the practice hoop, and then you can watch the relevant bits on the hexagon later. But this is the whole centipede. So what I've done is I've drawn two lines, two blue lines, the sort of shape that you want your centipede to be, and we're going to work opposite rows of blanket stitch. So if you're right-handed, you're stitching from left to right, and if you're left-handed, you're stitching from right to left. And I think I showed you that in the previous video with the caterpillar. So we did blanket stitch before, but that was a close blanket stitch, and we're now doing an open normal blanket stitch. So always come up on the line and go down into the area that you want to work in, and we're going to take the needle up on the line and so you've got a little stitch just here. Now you can decide how many legs you want your centipede to have. So decide how long you want them to be, how far apart you want them to be, whether you want any to be shorter than the other. So you can vary them a little bit if you wish. Now go down into the area. I'm holding my thread with my left hand and I'm coming up through the loop on the line. And obviously you need to turn the corner, so just think about where you want your leg to end up. So that one's pointing in a slightly different direction. That one's a bit shorter, but I'm not going to undo it. Always up on the line through the loop, and I'm pointing my needle towards me, so the loop is towards me. When you get to the end, you can either put a stitch straight down. I'm going to actually do a stitch slightly to the right, only to make it centipede shaped. Now the other line, and take your thread down and come up just a little way to the right of your starting thread on the line, and you're trying to get it to match the previous line. So your next stitch, just look where the prong was and try and get them to line up. Now that's in an ideal situation. It's not critical if one doesn't quite line up, but that's what you're trying to achieve. So mine's there. I think you'll find it's more important to make your centipede look right than for the prongs to line up exactly. Because it's curved, it's actually quite hard to get them to line up. Particularly on the outside here, I wanted to do another stitch really. Now I've completely lost count, but anyway. I think there's just the one more. And then I'm going to take a little stitch to the right just to make it match up with my starting stitch there. Okay, so that's the legs of the centipede. Now we're going to lace him up through the middle. Now for the lacing up. I've changed to my tapestry needle and I'm using a different coloured thread so you can see how it works. I'm right-handed, so I'm stitching from left to right. I'm going to lace up this in this direction. If you're left-handed, you'll start on the other end of this row here and you'll stitch from right to left. So we're now going to go under the first blanket stitch, and then go under the one underneath. So I'm actually taking the thread over the one I've just done and going under the next one and then the one underneath. So if you just think about going under, it might be easier, but you're actually sort of going over that one. I'm not pulling my thread too tight because we want this to look as if it's the insect's body, so don't pull it too tight. It's actually easy to miss one out by mistake. There we go, so the thread's going over this one, back over, and then under the opposite one. Nearly done. And you can sort of decide where to finish. I'm actually going to go under that prong, I think. And then just take your thread down. I could have gone through the other side as well. And that is your centipede. So the next video shows the centipede on the hexagon and then the leaf on top. We're going to use the FS12 for the blanket stitch, which is the yellowy orange colour. So come up on the left hand side on one of the lines if you're right-handed, and then take your stitch, and you can decide how long you want your centipede's legs to be if you like, and how close together you'd like them. always take your stitch down away from the line. You've got a loop and come up on the line, pointing the needle towards you. My final stitch will just go into the fabric to anchor it there. And now I'm going to turn it round and do the other side, and I will return to show you the lacing. To do the weaving, I'm using the variegated green and red thread, but you could use the dark grey if you want. Over and under. And so on. So you're lacing him up. I'll continue with that, and we're then going to do the leaf here in a fishbone stitch. The leaf is going to be done in a fishbone stitch. If you did the stitch wheel with me, we did a raised fishbone stitch there, but we didn't do the fishbone stitch, which is a different stitch. Now, we're going to come up at the tip of the leaf. We're using the FS01 silk with the crewel needle, and take a stitch down, and you can see that I've drawn a line down the centre here, about quarter of the way down the leaf. And if you're right-handed, then come up to the left a little way down, but next to that stitch, and go down on the right so that it's on the other side of the vein. So you're not aiming for the line here, you're aiming to go just to the right of it. If you're left-handed, you'll simply come up to the right as your first stitch. So the next stitch and the first stitch for left-handers would be to the right, and then go to the left of that line opposite the previous stitch but overlapping it, and to the left again and a little bit further down the line, overlapping the previous stitch, to the right, and to the left. Just continue down the leaf. Now, if you find that you get to the bottom before you've finished your either side here, it probably means that you've drawn quite a fat leaf, and as I have here. But I'm just going to carry on as far as I can. And And then I'm going to sneak some stitches in another one in there. And then I'm just going to do some straight stitches to just fill in that little gap there. There we go. I'm just going to put another one there. So I want to just go over that line there. Done. Next we're going to do one of the ladybirds.